So I'd like to call to order the July 19th, 2023 Architectural Review Committee meeting. In attendance, we have myself, Patrick Tregenza, Justin Polly, Shelley Smith, Kimberly Turgan. And if staff, you can let us know your names, just because I don't have your names listed here and I'm going to butcher them if I try.
Okay. I can announce the staff members present. We have our planning manager, Levi Hill, principal planner, Roveri, senior associate planner, Schmidt, associate planner, Buggert, and myself, recording secretary, Barrera.
Thank you. Um,
Can we reflect that
Payam is now, and
committee member?
committee
Also-
member Ostavar has also arrived. We just started Payam, so are you here? Okay, good. And with that, I'd like to open the consent agenda. Is there any member of the public that would like to discuss anything on the consent agenda? Oh, and Erica, you could probably announce how people can check in online.
Sure. Members of the public are encouraged to join our meetings via Zoom Gov, a secure service that connects you live with no lag time. This meeting is also streamed live on youtube.com/City of Monterey and Comcast Channel 25. If you would like to provide public comment, please join the meeting using Zoom or by telephone, making sure to join in time to accommodate delays. To join the Zoom meeting from a computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864, then enter the webinar ID. Today's webinar ID is 161-914-9563. If prompted for a participant ID, press pound. To provide public comment via Zoom, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. To provide comments by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. Public commenters will be announced using their last 3 phone number digits or the name typed into Zoom. Public commenters will be muted until it is their turn to speak. Please turn off TV or computer speakers or go to another room while connected, as background noise interferes with the broadcast. Public speakers will be called upon in order of hands raised. There is a 3-minute time limit for today's meeting. Please stay within that limit. There are currently no hands raised online.
Thank you. So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from June 21st, 2023.
I move to approve the meeting minutes of June 21st, 2023.
I hear a second. Okay, so the motion was put forward by committee member Schmidt and seconded by committee member Osavar. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstain? Abstain, okay. So that carries with 1 abstain from committee member Polly. And we're going to move on now to, sorry, before we do that, we're now going to open the meeting up to any public comments for anything that's not on today's agenda. Anybody in the audience? Anybody online?
There are no
hands raised. Okay, great. Then we're going to go ahead and move on to item number 3, confirm annual appointments for chair and vice chair. It's not a project under CEQA, so I'm not sure exactly. Does we just have a motion to approve?
You can choose to hear my staff report, or you
Okay.
can
Yeah, we can-
skip it.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your staff report, as
Okay.
long as it's short and sweet.
Sure. So in July of each year, our policy on the term and selection of chair and vice chair requires that the chair and vice chair rotate. And so that it's July, so it's time for a rotation. And the policy that's attached in your packet as attachment 1 says that the longest serving ARC member that hasn't served as chair is eligible to now serve as chair. And so that would be committee member Tregenza. He has not served as chair. So he is now eligible as the chair, and then the member who has served longest after committee member Tregenza is committee member Polly. And so now he is eligible to serve as vice chair.
Great.
And so it's staff's recommendation that member Tregenza be appointed to chair and member Polly be appointed to vice chair.
And I guess we do we have to verbally say, yeah, I'm okay with that?
Yes,
First,
we
okay,
need a
so-
motion and a vote.
Okay. I'm okay with that. Are you okay with that? Okay, so can somebody make a motion and we'll do a vote to approve item number 3?
I move to follow staff's recommendation and appoint committee member Tregenza as chair and committee member Polly as vice chair for this next term.
Second. Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So item 3 passes unanimously. Thank you, guys. And I would like to just thank Chair Hunter, who's off on vacation, for the great job that he did this last year as chair. It was an honor to serve under him.
Did you take over next? Is this your first?
Well, I'm filling in for him now, and now I'm officially the dude. So, yeah, so, yeah,
You are the man,
I guess so. And you are
the
the next
man in waiting.
the man in waiting. All right, we're gonna move on to item number 4. Consider 886 Cannery Row, Monterey Bay Aquarium, architectural review permit ARP 23-0067 for preliminary and final architectural review of a sea otter rehabilitation and surrogacy family and associated tree removal application ART 23-0137 for the removal of 2 Monterey cypress trees. And staff, Matthew?
Yes, I will share my screen. Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Buggert, and I'm an associate planner with the City of Monterey's Planning Division. Today, we're here to talk about 886 Cannery Row, the aquarium for an architectural review permit and tree removal application. The recommendation from city staff is that the ARC adopt resolutions to approve the architectural review permit and tree removal application with conditions of approval. The site is in the northwestern portion of the city. The general plan designation is public, semi-public, and the zoning is the Cannery Road District. The existing site is at the corners of Ocean View Boulevard and David Avenue and Cannery Row. The location of the improvement would be at the southernmost portion of the aquarium, right next to the existing recreation trail and the queuing area for the aquarium itself. The area of improvement would be in an existing paved area where they currently store various equipment. They use it for staging and basically existing aquarium operations. And there is a small planter area around the perimeter in which there are 2 trees on the right side of the improvement area that are proposed for removal. The facility itself would include 2 tanks for the sea otter rehabilitation and surrogacy. This entire area would be open on the roof. I'll show a little bit more detail on that in the next few slides. And there would be 2 fully enclosed rooms with roofs that are called out as room as examination rooms for closer inspection of the otters. On the left side would be some of the life support systems in a life support system yard, some mechanical equipment in the upper left, and a walkway to access the rest of the aquarium operations to the north. There are some existing hazmat, hazardous material storage on site that would be on the left. The portion of the structure that would not necessarily have a roof would have a mesh roofing. And this would be, they could probably talk to it a little bit more, but for the natural environment to be accessible to the sea otters, rain and whatnot, but still keep the birds and debris and whatnot out of the actual facility. And you can see the two enclosed rooms on the left and right here. None of this would actually be visible from the outside, but it gives a good idea of what the facility is used for and what it would be used for. The existing condition, including the story pole netting, is included in this photo. You can see the recreation trail continue off to the left, the queuing area down here on the right, and the existing fence line. The orange netting here is slightly visible through the trees. This tree here is proposed for removal. However, this one's not, and these are not. There's one existing tree behind this tree on the other side of the fence that is one of the ones proposed for removal. A rendering of it, the facility would angle upwards towards this side, mostly for sound, so that people and the otters wouldn't hear each other. And would continue up to about 17 feet. From the south side, Ocean View Boulevard, looking at the aquarium itself, you can see the orange netting on the right. It was hard to get an angle closer on because there's existing foliage that's covering the tree and fence line anyways. And here is a rendering of the angled wall that would go up, along with an architectural drawing of it extending above the existing fence line. Here's from an existing observation deck. You would still be able to see portions of the cannery above the orange netting here. This orange netting shows the approximate area of where the building would be constructed. So findings required for approval by ARC. One is that the siding form, mass, and style need to be appropriate for the site. The Cannery Row land use plan and aesthetic guidelines note the use of broken roof lines with high and low roofs, which serve to create a very intricate skyline, pointing to the fact that there are different forms, angles, unique buildings down there that add to its interest. And the siding that would be used for it would be vertical board siding concrete patterns that are reflective of the original Hogden Cannery. They don't have them included in this slideshow, and I probably should have, but they are included in the staff report, the comparison between the two of them. Another finding for approval by ARC is that the project would not impair views, privacy, or the environment. The proposed project would conceal the existing parking lot, and the story poles were installed. To my knowledge, no comments have been received by staff for the project. And after the story poles were installed, staff also went out, because it's within the coastal zone and would be a sensitive site, to double check it and see if any views would be impacted. And for the most part, no. I have a couple of photos of that. On this photo, you can see that the existing parking lot would simply be shielded and no coastal views would be impacted. Like their rendering shows, it doesn't really strike into the skyline at all. There was one corner in which a portion of rocks was somewhat concealed, but this was partially up somebody's driveway and would really not be a coastal view impact. An additional finding for approval by ARC is that the proposal needs to be consistent with guiding documents. There's a 45-foot maximum for the building envelope on the site, and the maximum height of the structure would be 17 feet. The maximum FAR is 2. It would be less than the maximum FAR. For the recreation trail policies and standards, there would be no encroachment into the recreation trail, and the warehouse style aesthetics would be consistent with what's required by that document. And it is an allowed use on the site. And finally, the finished colors materials need to be appropriate for the site. Staff found that the materials that are proposed would be consistent. The metal materials would be muted to reduce glare. Lighting would be shielded. The light gray corrugated metal would generally match the Cannery Row aesthetic. And finally, in situations where healthy trees prevent reasonable development of permitted uses, the trees may be approved for removal. The two Monterey cypress trees were considered and also looked at by the city forester. Neither were considered significant, and one was considered in poor condition. The use and development of the site is permitted and allowed, and a tree replacement as a condition is included in this project in a replanting of 3 15-gallon trees. As to their final location, that has not yet been determined, but the conversation has been started with the city forester as to an appropriate location. So with that, the proposed conditions are the tree replacement condition and standard conditions of approval. And the recommendation by city staff is that ARC adopt resolutions to approve the architectural review permit and associated tree removal permit with conditions. With that, that concludes staff's presentation. The applicant is also here in the room and also online.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any committee questions for Matthew? Just a question.
Can I clarify, you said there's a tree replacement condition and that has to occur on this site?
No,
Okay, that's going to be elsewhere. Okay, thanks.
Being discussed. I did have a question about the trees. I was trying to, it wasn't clear to me which ones on the plan were being removed. I wonder if you could pull that up and even just point to them.
absolutely.
I thought he said that one wasn't, and it was in the rendering. So yeah, that's what it's.
It was hard to get an actual photo of the tree because it's shielded by other trees. So the one that showed up in all the photos is this one on the bottom. And then there is another tree over here
That one is being slated to be removed.
that would be removed. But it's this tree here that's in all the photos.
Both those trees.
In the condition of both of those, you don't know which one was. Because that big one is obviously, it's a nice big tree.
Yeah,
Um,
this tree here is staying. The
that
one,
one is staying.
yes, this big one here is staying. There's actually another tree behind that tree and also behind this tree on the left.
There's a rendering that shows the trees that are staying intact in it, with a bunch of like silhouette, that one there. So that
Yeah.
shows.
So this tree is staying and the trees that are on the left are staying. There's one tree here in the middle that is showing up in all the photos that would be removed.
It might be nice if they could put one in the middle there just to kind of block some of the building, but I don't know if there's any, ground available for that, but that's a comment. Sorry, my bad. Any other questions for Matthew? Would the applicant like to make a presentation either online or in person?
The applicants raised their hand online.
Okay. Please state your name and unmute yourself. Or do unmute yourself and please state your name.
Good afternoon, Queen Luong, project architect with EHCD. In addition to the report findings, I just wanted to highlight a couple of the elements from the design of the project that Matthew alluded to. First and foremost, the structure is an open air structure with no roof above it, and that is critical for the holding areas because of, from an animal care perspective, they, as Matthew mentioned, need to see the sky and continue to be connected to the marine environment even during their rehabilitation. With regards to the mesh, I'm not sure if I can share the screen, but within the package there is a rendering of the interior view as well as a sample of that stainless steel cable mesh. It's typical that this material is used in aviaries, other containment, open air containment areas. So it's quite transparent. It's also detailed in such a way that it's below the roof line, or rather the sill line of the wall, so it won't be perceived from the exterior. Secondly, I just wanted to emphasize that the existing wood fence is, as well as the existing planted area in front of the wood fence on the public side, will remain even during construction. And those are the two highlights or points that I'd like to make about the project, in addition to what was noted on the report. I'm happy to answer any additional questions about the project, and we do have representatives from the Aquarium Conservation Program to answer any questions about the sea otter rehabilitation program itself.
Thank you. Are there any committee questions for the applicant?
I did have one question about the
Is your microphone
lighting.
on?
I did have another question about the just lighting. I do see a number of lights on there. I would assume for the animals' welfare, those lights would either be on a timer, turned off at night, or especially light, low
Dark skies.
low impact. Can you comment on that?
So our overall approach to the lighting design is to have it actually be as unlit as possible. The intent is to keep a normal diurnal cycle of lighting for the animal care. The lighting that you see along the ramp at the back of the project, they are low foot length lights that are recessed into the shotcrete. So they're used specifically for any after dusk hour access that the animal care staff would need for guiding them to the door at the back and access to the facility. There are two sets of lights within the open holding area. Again, there is a set of low recessed lights that are for emergencies. And then there are specific task lights that are about 8 feet in elevation. Again, these are intended for those occasions where staff will need to have access to the facilities after hours, and specifically only for the care of the animals, not for general lighting. There are 3 existing light poles on site that were being removed. The task lighting that are associated with the intensive care units are obviously going to be task lighting specific, only used when it's required. They are underneath the hard lid roof. And all of the lights that are exposed to the air are either recessed or are down lights.
Thank you. Just to clarify, so occasional use only, except for some emergency egress.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
And can you state your name one more time? I didn't quite catch it on when you.
Sure. My name is Queen Luong. The last name is spelled Luong.
Great. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And are there any other questions for the applicant from the committee?
Hi, this is Justin Polly. I've got a question for you. There's quite a bit of acoustic paneling and some sound absorbing wall panels and things like that inside. Is that to try to deaden noise from the outside, or is there an anticipated amount of noise that you anticipate being made inside the structure? It just seems like a lot of acoustic paneling.
One of the main drivers of the design of those acoustic panels is to actually deaden the cross communication between the animals. So if there are animals that are being cared for in the rooms themselves, any sound that they hear from the otters that are in the holding tanks could be, let's say, create a communication between the two. And we want to make sure that, especially while they're in the ICUs, that there's a level of calmness and not a heightened level of activities. And so all of the acoustic panels are in effect to deaden the cross communication between like the tanks and the ICU units. And you'll see that within the ICU units themselves, we also have acoustical treatment underneath the roof as well as within the walls there.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I'd like to open this up for public comments. Is there anybody present or online that would like to comment on this agenda item?
There are no hands raised online.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to close public comments and open up to committee comments on this project.
I'll go ahead and start. It's a structure of utility, but I'd commend the aquarium. They've always done a really nice job of bringing in really solid architectural teams ever since EHDD did the original structure, and then I think it was Caballero and Associates did the research facility. Everything they build, they take very seriously, and they do a really nice job with it. And I think the manner in which they've used the board form concrete on this to relate it to other structures, both historic and contemporary in Cannery Row, is actually quite nice, and seems it'll serve its purpose well in close proximity to the aquarium. So I think it's a really nice project.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I actually think in general, it seems like it's an improvement. I mean, I know the area well, as I'm sure many of us do. And it's, you could see through the fence a little bit over there and see the utility yard. So this does seem quite fitting for the location. I guess I'm a little disappointed. Maybe there wasn't a little more evidence for attempting to save the 22-inch caliper tree, which is it's a large tree. And that perhaps there's, I think as you were saying, maybe there's an opportunity to at least put one of those replacement trees in front of that area there. But yeah, otherwise good. Very good project.
Great. All right, call for motion.
Buying the project.
Motion to approve 886 Cannery Row, Monterey Bay Aquarium, permit number ARP 230067.
Here, second.
I second that motion.
Okay, so motion was put forward by Committee Member Ostabar and seconded by Committee Member Polly. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So the motion carries unanimously. This can be appealed within 10 days to the Planning Commission. Okay, well, thank you, Matthew. We're going to move on to consider 351 Watson Street, ARC permit ARP 21-0162 for preliminary and final architectural review of exterior alterations, including a two-story addition at an existing two-story single-family dwelling. Hello, Chris.
Hi there. Thank you, Chair. Looks like we're sharing, so we'll begin. So my name is Chris Schmidt. I'm a senior associate planner for the city, and I've been working with the applicant, the homeowner, and the neighbors on this project. This is a project that the ARC did review twice last year, almost exactly a year ago on, I think it was July 20th, and then there was a follow-up review in September. So just moving on, the staff recommendation is to approve with conditions of approval. The site is located in Old Town Monterey. It's a 4,522.5 square foot site, which is our substandard. Standard is 5,000. And it contains an existing two-story single-family dwelling. It is zoned R3, which is our multifamily district, but it does have quite a few single-family residences in the neighborhood there. So the applicant is proposing a nearly 800 square foot two-story addition at the rear, which you can see on the top site plan. The top is proposed, the bottom is existing. And here's the existing floor plan. It's a demo plan and floor plan. So you'll see a portion of the rear. There's a rear shed roof addition here that would be removed, as well as the existing deck and stair. And it would make way for this addition. This is again out the upper floor. You can see the stair going down to the first floor. And then here's the lower floor, rather. And the existing laundry would be converted to both laundry and a bathroom. And then there'd be a lower bedroom with 2 doors to the exterior and some windows. So here are the side elevations. The top 2 images are the existing condition elevations with all note, which I will note on a following slide, but the downspout on the left image is actually in the location of the orange line. So that spout would actually be moved to its location in that image there. But here you can see both sides of the addition. The applicant's proposing new single hung windows, and then as well as skylights on all 3 sides of the addition. Here is the front elevation. There's essentially no change. That existing skylight on the left-hand side here was actually not permitted as part of this application. It would be permitted through this application. And then here's the rear elevation. So you can see in the previous edition, if I think we have a couple of new members on the ARC. So the previous edition was a flat roof edition with windows that really didn't match the style of the home. So the designer here did change to this hipped roof style that matches the existing dwelling, as well as the single hung window style to match. And then of course the sliding glass door isn't, there are no sliding glass doors except for at the second story there. So it's kind of a similar aesthetic, although it's a 3-paned door. So just to start, I did provide 2 letters to the ARC. You believe you received them by email from Carol Erickson. I've only noted the first 12 items that were listed in the letter that was provided yesterday, and then I can discuss the second. So if you've had a chance to review as we go, that would be great. Otherwise, let me know if you need a moment to read through those comments. But essentially and I'll go through subsequent slides for generally each one of these items, but the neighboring property owner to the south has concern for excessive fenestration, skylights, the proposed vertical fenestration, specifically the windows on the south, parking, existing non-conforming side yard setbacks, and proposed new windows at that south wall that's non-conforming, which with respect to setbacks, site coverage with the existing condition of the site covered with concrete and turf, topography, namely the site's former topography as compared to the existing condition today, errors in the drawings, stormwater management, historic eligibility, neighboring historic residents as an example of similar additions, a sagging corner of the house on the south side, and the use of the site as a daycare, which requires a conditional use permit. So starting with fenestration, the neighboring property owners have opposed the use of skylights on this building, as well as have requested that at least one of these windows, specifically this window that I've highlighted here, be removed for privacy and privacy impact reasons. The skylights, they've also noted that they have concern for the skylights effect on the night sky, noting that there could be light penetration through those skylights and it would affect the dark sky. I will also note the city's general plan does support the use of design features that really do protect the night sky. So there was a comment about parking. So basically, the neighbor has contested that because the site does not lack the 2 required parking spaces, one covered and one covered, it should be considered a non-conforming structure and no addition would be allowed. And so I've copied the section from our parking ordinance that discusses when parking is to be provided. And I'll just kind of summarize it, but essentially when there is a change, as defined here, I've underlined it under section A, 38-114A, when there is a change or alteration as defined, alteration or intensification, that means a use or an addition that would increase the number of parking spaces or loading berths required. And I'll follow up what is a change that necessitates providing the required parking for the use and when or why it would not. But the next section B, titled non-conforming parking or loading, states no existing use of land or structure shall be deemed to be non-conforming solely because of the lack of off-street parking or loading facilities required by this article. So this site is not non-conforming because it does not, it doesn't have the required covered parking. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a non-conforming use or structure. This section discusses that parking is to be provided as required by the schedule on the following slide, that's the section referenced by the neighbor. But essentially, what I wanted to explain here is the single family dwelling requirement I've highlighted here is for a site greater than 3,600 square feet is 2, one covered and one uncovered, as I've explained. There's no change of use or intensification here that would require those additional parking spaces to be required. So an example, if this was a multifamily building that contained, say, 2 studios, so you can see under multifamily rental, we have 2 studios, and they wanted to add a new unit, that new unit's additional parking would be required. Similarly, if we had a commercial business, I'll skip adult business, we had an animal boarding business, and they wanted to add 500 square feet, an additional parking space would be required there. But simply adding floor area to the single family dwelling does not mean that that a covered parking space is required because it's not an addition as defined where there's a space necessary. So staff disagrees with that interpretation. Moving on to the non-conforming side setback. So this at this existing condition, the side here is, I believe, close to 3.5 feet away, where the requirement is 4 from the property line. And the neighbors contest that the new window, which this elevation shows the proposed, right? There's an existing window here in orange. And they believe because the building is so close that the new window, which they say is larger than the existing, should not be allowed to be relocated to this location because it is larger. I didn't go out and measure it, but they look fairly similar in size, so staff didn't really have any issue with this. The ARC can decide if there's truly a privacy or issue there. Concrete and turf coverage and topography. So it was revealed that prior to this application, there was work done in the rear yard where there was some fill and retaining walls constructed and backfilled with turf. And so the neighbor had concern for new impervious surfaces from those retaining walls and for impervious surface beneath the turf. The staff verified that beneath that turf is a rock aggregate mix, which is really typical for turf. So there was really no concern for any sort of drainage issues here. The applicant's also proposing to have new drainage features installed as part of this project. And then additionally, the topography issue is just that there was some backfilling and that the neighbor wanted to have the height limit measured based on the prior grade. There's really no way for that to be done. The survey was prepared in 2020 and it shows this existing condition. And this, that backfilling was not part of this project. So the staff is supporting the project based on the current condition as we're reviewing today. And yeah, here's that survey that just verifies that it matches that photo on the right hand side there. The neighbor did note a few inaccuracies in the drawings, and I've highlighted him here on the left. You see a note that says new family room, 20 foot 6 inches by 16 foot 1 inch, and 320.2 square feet outer dimension. So that is not correct. The exterior measurements showing 19 foot on the north side and 19 foot 4 inches on the east side are the correct measurements that I did verify that they scale out properly. So we would want our applicant to update that so that it's correct. I also mentioned you can see on this elevation here, I mentioned that the downspout is, the existing downspout is located in the wrong position. The correct position is in orange there, and the new downspout would be shown where they've drawn in here. So that should be corrected as well. And then on this footing detail, it didn't exactly match what all the elevation details were. So they would have, and the designer did go ahead and actually update that and show it to me, but they would update that to match what the elevations show. There was concern for the landscaping itself, the existing condition using turf. Here are just a few photos of the turf. The applicant has actually, or the homeowner rather, has actually gone ahead and installed trees and other landscape features within the turf. They basically cut a hole in that, you can see in that far left side, cut a hole in the turf and basically planted trees. And they've done that basically on the perimeter of the house in both the rear and front yard. And then these other two photos just show the rock base. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see some of that DG rock and other aggregate as we pulled back the corners there. And then on the floor plan, I just wanted to call out that the new drainage, basically perforated pipe, is proposed at the perimeter of the addition and then the perimeter of the rear yard, and it would outlet at the outside of the property adjacent to a city storm drain, which I did talk to Public Works about, and they had no issue with that. Historic eligibility. So the neighbors have noted that this site is on the historic reconnaissance survey list, which basically means the city hired a consultant to go and review all properties in the Old Town neighborhood and identify whether they have the potential for historic eligibility. At that time, the historian did record this property as potentially eligible pending additional review by a historian. Historian for this project found that the property was not eligible, but in the case of what's required by the zoning ordinance, there are two paths to move forward with this project. It's to either have the project removed from the eligibility list, or the project is designed to be consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards, which they did here. Staff found the project to be consistent. Those findings are in your report and resolution. And then there was also some new information that was discovered last week that this site is actually operating as a large family daycare, which the city has two definitions for daycares. Up to 8 is principally, up to 8 preschool age children are allowed, and there are some nuances, are allowed to be taken care of at the daycare business, and that's principally permitted. A large family daycare allows up to 14 preschool age children to be taken care of, but it requires a use permit. So the applicant doesn't have a use permit for this business. They have their state licenses, but not the city's use permit requirements. So the staff has recommended a condition of approval that the applicant will limit the non-residential use of the site to daycare limited, which is that up to 8 kids daycare, unless a use permit is granted for use as a daycare large family. And the city will not issue building permits, and work may not begin until that condition is met and proof submitted to the city. So just noting some of the other comments that were provided today. And if you want to pull that up, so the neighbor did call out that the project is inconsistent with the Old Town Neighborhood Area Plan, specifically the objective of the plan and that objective is, I'll read it aloud. The primary objective of this plan is to retain the Old Town character, which is defined as the appearance, design, mass scale, proportion, setting, and site layout of the neighborhood as developed before 1950, including the following: retention of original pre-1950 buildings. And then there was emphasis by way of underlining for design of buildings constructed in the neighborhood before 1950, which this building was, size and scale of pre-1950 buildings, site planning, including setbacks, light and air, building design, siting, and materials of pre-1950 buildings, stucco and wrought iron materials on Spanish rock and stone walls, and concrete shaped concrete walls from pre-1950 development. And that one, there was a photo provided that the existing concrete wall, retaining wall at the front had been altered and basically had put stone, rock stone veneer on the exterior. And so the neighbors are contesting that this project is inconsistent with the Old Town Plan's goals to follow these directives, as well as follow the historic ordinance requirement for preservation. And then there's also a note for the permeable open space requirement, citing Monterey City Code 38-25D7D, which states a significant portion of the site shall be developed with a permeable surface to allow groundwater to recharge wherever possible, and the amount and type to be approved by the Architectural Review Committee. So they're contesting that there is too much impermeable surface at the site, which is the existing condition of the site. So, and then there are photos that show the changes from the prior condition in the front yard, and I believe the rear yard. More close-up photos, but the front yard photos show the prior condition where there was landscaping as well as DG, and then the new condition, which is basically turf. It's an older photo, so it doesn't show any of the landscaping plantings, but it does show some of the children's play area equipment out there as well. So I think I've gotten everything there. There are also photos showing the work that had been done, which actually one of the photos does show that beneath the turf isn't concrete, it's actually this DG material, but just showing the grade difference between what was likely close to the prior grade and where the grade is today, which they state is about 1 to 2 feet above that natural soil. So moving on to the findings for approval. Number 1, proposed siding form, mass, and architectural style are appropriate. Staff was able to make this finding. The addition complies with the required setbacks. It is set back from the existing home on the north side to comply with the setback, and it does add a bit of fenestration by setting that area back. And the form, mass, and style match the existing dwelling. Number 2, views, privacy, and living environment are not unreasonably impaired. The staff did not find any unreasonable view or privacy impairments. The addition is adjacent to second level decks, and I would add to the resolution, it is adjacent to living space. At least there is a house next door. So that is true. Number 3, the project is consistent with city plans and design guidelines. The general plan designation is single family residential, and that would not actually, I'm sorry, it is multifamily residential, but it does allow single family residential. And the proposal is it is consistent with the single family design guidelines and the Old Town character. Staff was able to make that finding. Number 4, the exterior finish, colors, materials, and all other exterior features are appropriate. The addition would generally match the existing with some elements to differentiate from the original, including the new siding at the lower level, the new windows, and the sliding glass door. So with that, that concludes my presentation. The property owner, the applicant, and the neighbors are all here, and I'm happy to try to answer whatever questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any committee questions for Planner Schmidt? Yeah.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I will note, there was also a spreadsheet provided that shows the area of all of the new windows. So if the ARC was willing to consider whether or not they would prefer the all the windows be maintained in the proposal or some of them removed, that might serve as useful information.
Where does that?
Uh,
Where does that exist?
it
Is
was-
it in? it's
I
in the-
did
it's in
print
the
it out
packet.
and
There, it's that.
supply
I
it,
got
yeah.
got We got a lot of paper here, so.
I have a question, Chris. Basically, what are we allowed to talk about here? I imagine the use permit for the daycare is outside of our purview.
Right, yeah.
What about the neighbors' letters have pointed out some things like this stone on the wall and these sort of odd Victorian street lamp type fixtures in the front lawn. Those are not proposed. They were existing, clearly not there before, installed. Like if we saw those on a new project, we'd probably say those were not appropriate. How are we supposed to treat stuff like that?
Yeah, I would say, one thing I didn't mention too was there was lighting that was installed in the rear yard that was visible in one of the photos that I showed. All of those weren't necessarily part of this application, and we're gonna have to, the wall included, we'll refer it to the code compliance officer and they'll either have to remove it or permit it. It wasn't included in this application.
So Chris, on the tail end of that comment, if there's something that, like those, what Justin called the Victorian kind of street lamp things in the corner, if that would those types of changes, would those have had to come before architectural review committee prior to being installed if they had done it in the correct order?
Yeah, so the threshold for an architectural review permit it's in Old Town, it's basically any sort of exterior modification, with the exception of landscaping. We don't typically require a permit just for landscaping.
But lighting would not be considered landscaping, would it?
No, yeah, so I think if they had an application just for lighting and they not the second story addition, it probably wouldn't even go to the ARC. Those are usually administrative. But correct, yeah.
Thank you.
On a similar question, like the grading, the retaining walls, the fill, whatever that is, that all goes to building or planning, not necessarily ARC.
The grading itself for the project.
Well, what they did to the backyard, they changed the level of it, but that's not really an ARC problem. It's more of a planning and building thing. I'm assuming that's my question.
Yeah, so I mean, I think at the time when the city received the complaint for this, which was I think in 2019, there was a determination that there was no permit required then.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but has like the retaining wall that holds all that fill in, has that been inspected by building or planning and it's deemed appropriate for the amount of weight that it bears?
I think that based on its size, it doesn't require a building permit. There's a specific height when a building permit's required. I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's close to 4 feet.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
And
30 inches, I think.
yeah, and so this one was
Well below that.
only about 2 feet.
I had a bunch of other questions. I can't think of them now.
I do have one question about the windows, the chart that was submitted. And I'm sorry that I don't know, but does that fulfill the requirements? Or it's within the limits
There's no specific standard for
for
amount
windows?
amount of new window area.
Okay.
The real findings, and I can pull them back up. The findings for approval really only deal with is the style appropriate and is there a privacy issue?
Okay. And then the second piece of that is the skylights, because there are 6 skylights. That's quite a few. Do you find that interferes with the dark sky? I mean, you mentioned it, but
I didn't necessarily think there was an issue with the skylights. If the ARC doesn't find that they're appropriate for the style or there's concern for the light, that's fine. I didn't find it inconsistent with the general plan requirement.
So there's no documentation about how many square feet of skylights you can put in a single family house?
No.
Interesting. Okay.
Is there anything in the regulations that they need to be, I know in Carmel, for instance, they have to be shaded on the inside to prevent light leakage?
There's no requirement.
That's surprising.
I have one more question here. And again, this might go back to the whole daycare question. It looks like there's a whole lot of play equipment in the front. Obviously, that's movable play equipment, which I'm guessing doesn't come under the purview of the ARC or the zoning regulations, but it's not for personal use. It's to run a business. Is there any issue with that I mean, there's just a lot of play equipment and it's like a park.
Yeah, no, they're non-permanent, so they don't require an architectural review permit.
Mhm.
But yeah, I hear you.
Just because I think everybody summarized everything. I just want to summarize it. Again, I think there were a lot of things that are just sort of code and enforcement. So we're going to try and filter some of that out. You said approve with conditions. Can you remind me which conditions? I think that was just the daycare.
The daycare condition, and then it's not in the resolution, but a condition to just correct some of those minor note errors.
Yeah. Some of the things like the lighting, et cetera, that's code and enforcement. So we're going to avoid that for now. So in some ways it's really, actually last time, I think I remember we noted something about the grade seeming different. It looks like they did some work on that.
They did.
And then, so really, I think what's in front of us is really kind of style skylights. I think that's sort of a question. Yes,
Anything
it's-
outside of
yeah,
that? I guess that goes back to my original question. What do we review here? Anything outside of that addition?
Right,
2-story, 800 square foot addition is out of our purview.
right.
Any other questions for Planner Schmidt? All right, would the applicant like to make a presentation? Please state your name.
My name is Idris Rohina. And good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Chris. So this project took quite some time, and I started this back in 2021, and some of you know this, and then this day takes some time, and we tried our best to bring all the city's code to match it. That's why it took some time. Regarding our neighbor, I don't know what the problem is that they are creating, although it's not affecting their any sort of problem with their property or it's blocking their view. But as you all saw, that they keep on bringing all these extra stuff in order for us not to do this extension. So this looks really nice. And if you see the design, and then if there is anything else, I'm ready to bring those changes, but this is really important for my family.
Thank you. Can you just stay for a second? Are there any questions for the applicant? All right, thank you. Are there any public comments? Fernando, what's the time limit? 3 minutes on public comments?
Yes, you can implement the 3-minute time limit.
Okay, good. We're gonna, please state your name and you'll have 3 minutes.
Carol Erickson. I'm the owner of the property to the south of Mr. Rohina's property. And we have had many considerations but not conversations. That has not been available to us. There are very serious drainage problems in that entire neighborhood. It all slopes to the southwest. And it means that if you fill in with concrete, it's sloping into our direction. And if it's impermeable surfaces, it's not going to be absorbed into the earth to feed the plants that they have planted. But we also have planted. I bought the house next door. The Rohinas did not live there at that time. I bought it in 2018. It had been on the market for a couple of years because people said, oh, it's an old house. It, in fact, is a 1912 house, and it is very soundly built. It had some major construction problems. A deck was falling off the backyard and could be pulled out with the carpenter's hands. And those things have all been remediated because that was important to us to rebuild the house as it was, with the old windows, which face directly from the dining room, face directly into the Rohinas house. And that's why having the windows and the skylights facing our direction would be a definite, it's a whole wall of windows on the north side. That would have been imposition. We also have small lights on the deck in the back at the same height of the Rohinas deck, but they are not 5 strings of whatever it is, 25 each. There are several strings. They're contained to our property. The fact that there's a child center there is fine with me. The noise of the children is not a problem. I am concerned about children who fall and hit gravel and concrete, even if it is under artificial turf. I'm a retired nurse, so I think about those things. So these are some of the concerns we have about the impermeability, the drainage. That whole hillside from Larkin School on down towards Franklin Street slopes down this direction, and anything that is feeding it, like from the streets or the houses above, or from people watering inconsiderately, affects us on this south side. And the fact that the lower,
Go ahead and finish your point.
the fact that the southeast, is it the southeast corner is sloping is a great concern, because that's where the drainage spouts are coming down, right down that very skinny little walkway, that 3.5 feet of walkway that used to be a gardens, which absorbed a lot of things, with a lot of very old historic plants in it. Old roses from the early days. That's not taking up any moisture anymore. It was all dug out and carried away, and then they put in the concrete, which abuts a concrete walk on our side of the house's side of the same walkway. So water running down the driveway, the walkway, because it's a slope. We did not pad it up with extra concrete underneath or fill. That is all draining our direction. We have diverted the runoff from our downspouts through plastic diverters so that it goes all into a sump.
I'd like to thank you, Ms. Erickson, for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please state your name, and you'll have, again, 3 minutes to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Molly Erickson speaking. Thank you for your very good questions about the existing code enforcement issues. You can delay action on this project until after the code enforcement matters have been resolved. Unfortunately, what's been happening for years on this is the city's been trying to play catch up. They don't find out about the changes until after the fact. And then it's a code enforcement issue where really, as you heard, these issues should have come before you for approval as an overall project. So you've heard about the removal of the historic features, this added stone veneer on the walls, the odd Victorian lights in the front, the grading, the turf, the need for a conditional use permit. you can defer action until after these have been resolved or at least moved forward at the city. You can also ask the applicant today to remove the Victorian streetlights or put in planting, or to have the bulbs or whatever removed. By the way, the photograph of the current existing picture was taken today. And so there is no planting in that front yard, none visible in the photograph anyway. So I just want to address a few points. I respect your time and appreciate your attention. If the ARC does consider approving the project today, and despite the many code enforcement problems and potentially opening the door to a lot more code enforcement problems down the road once this project actually permitted by the city gets underway, we do have a few specific requests to reduce the impacts, specifically with regard to the fenestration, which is certainly before you today. The skylights are really not consistent with this kind of style of the bungalow, or the historic design of the house and the neighborhood. You just don't see skylights along this. And this is one of 5 or 6 houses from Franklin past this house that are really almost original, and very consistent and have not been expanded to any great extent. So here there have been 6 skylights proposed, 6 skylights in one family room. And they would each be 12 square feet, 2 feet by 6 feet, according to the plans, which is 72 square feet, which at night, it's a family room. It's very conceivable and foreseeable that the family room would be well lit, whether by lighting for people in the room or televisions or whatever. That's especially true where the front room in this house is dedicated to the childcare space all in the front. So the family room would be presumably where people would be at night. And the general plan does protect the night sky. I don't think you've ever been faced with 72 square feet of skylights in a single room before. And so it would be appropriate either to eliminate all of them or at least the 2 on the south facing side. Also the vertical fenestration, you saw the photographs, which are the 2 south-facing windows. One of those south-facing windows will look into the 100-year-old windows of my mom's bungalow in her dining room. And those have been there. They can't be changed. They're historic, and there's an H2 designation on her property. So those windows stay, and she's worked very hard to protect them as she has to restore and protect the entire property. So you've got lighting concerns, and I am wrapping up, concerns about the open space and the code enforcement. And I appreciate your attention to this, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Erickson.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments in person or online?
There are no hands raised online.
Thank you. So we're going to close public comments on item number 5 and start committee comments on this. I'm sure there are plenty. I'll just start with the skylights. I think this personally is, I know the neighborhood very well. I live in the neighborhood. I think that's an excessive amount of skylights for one room. I think we could ask the applicant to maybe cut that in half, go with 3 or even 2, but I think 6, 72 square feet is a lot. And it is on the flight path to the Monterey Airport. And I know that you can't put any sort of lighting that isn't a dark skies approved light source. And yet I guess skylights are exempt from that. So that's my comment about the skylights.
I just like to say one thing about the addition, because there's obviously a lot of combativeness with the neighbors. The general form and massing of the addition looks a lot better than when we saw it, I guess 2 years ago or something. It was they just stuck a flat roof on it, and it didn't, and it didn't meld very well with the building. So I think the way you put the hip roof on it and done the siding, I think it melds much better with the historic house. I completely agree on the skylights. I think they're excessive. I think they would almost make the room uncomfortable to be in, particularly on a sunny day. And I would get it down to 2 skylights, to be honest. I don't feel you need 6 skylights in that room. The other issues, it's hard when, I'll say this to staff, it's hard when Miss Erickson stands up and says that we do have the right to hold up the project on these other issues, and staff is telling us that we can't really hold up the project on the, it just puts us in a strange position. And I think that we have to defer to the recommendations of staff on this, that we're not here to litigate the other non-conforming issues on the site.
Yeah, I would just say, the wall itself was brought forward today. The lights I discovered last week. So I think the committee could certainly have a condition that the lighting in the rear yard be removed. I would probably want to spend more time on the wall itself to see if it's something they can apply for before having a condition that it be removed and returned to its original condition.
Mhm.
Obviously the applicant has said that they need to remove the lighting to do the work.
Yeah.
And it's not part of their approval here. So if they put it back up, it does also become a code compliance issue then too. So,
Yeah. And I imagine there's also, if they were to get a use permit for the daycare facility, that they're going to have city and state inspectors in there that may nix a lot of the things that I imagine that front yard is not secure enough for a daycare facility. There's
Yeah.
things that are probably going to waterfall as a result of that inspection and that permit.
Yeah.
The only other comment I'd like to make is I think the drainage issue that Carol Erickson was bringing up with regards to there's a lot of hardscapes between the two houses, and typically there's a drainage swale or some sort of diversion mechanism right now. And if you look at the pictures both in the staff report and the applicant's drawings and the photographs provided by Ms. Erickson, the downspouts on the downhill side of the house are literally daylighting to concrete hardscape, which is running directly across the property line into the neighbor's parcel. You can see that on sheet A 3.1, I think, of the pictures on the bottom of sheet A 3.1 of the applicant's drawings. And also in, I believe there's some pictures of that in Ms. Erickson's letter, at least the one that was emailed out. So I think on that side of the house that we should put some sort of condition on there that water, if they're going to have hardscapes around the entire perimeter of the house, that water finds a way to be carried and contained on site rather than draining directly to a neighbor's house.
Okay, I'll just note that those daylighted perforated pipes actually daylight to Cooper Street, which is an alley. If you're looking at on the east rear property line, and so there is actually a storm drain directly adjacent to there. I mean, but it's something we can certainly.
I'm looking at the south side photo.
Oh, right.
Which is existing, though.
It's existing, but I think the complaint from the neighbor is legitimate, and look, it's draining directly onto a sloped concrete pad. And
okay,
yeah.
I'll just add to all this. I think I actually basically gonna echo, I think all the comments, things I wrote. Skylights, drainage is a serious condition, an issue typically. So somehow verifying that some of that is just being handled should be a condition. I think just make sure, water isn't impacting neighbors inappropriately. I think if they can provide evidence, especially, we had rains recently, so that would be existing. They could have images or photographs or video even that they could bring to the city, but that's compliance, I think, for the most part. Not we can do that as a condition of wanting drainage to be handled properly. I agree that with the childcare coming in, a lot of that's going to cascade to probably solving a number of the concerns. And the skylights, that was my only other one too. I'd also written down 2, but then maybe the possibility of a dormer, as the existing, I think, had sort of a dormer on that one side that would also fulfill that. It could be one dormer on that. I think that's the east side. I didn't remember which one, but And then otherwise, with that, you might not need even more skylights in addition to that, but it could. Or you could do, I think the neighbor said the north side would be preferable. So if you did, maybe you put one there. But those to me, the massing is much improved. It does seem to be a lot of improvements since the last time we saw it in that regard. And the other pieces seem drainage, some of those other lighting conditions and things like that will likely be fixed. I don't know how much we want to weigh into that as a condition. You've already put as a condition that it would have to go through that daycare permitting approval. So that would again likely lead to fixing a number of those other items.
Go ahead.
I am going to echo the concerns that my fellow committee members expressed regarding the number of skylights. I do think that you will feel an effect. If you were to put 6 skylights, it would be an unpleasant on a very sunny day. It would be very hot. It'd be very bright. So if you could reduce that, I do appreciate that you've come back with a redesign of the addition. I am concerned about the lighting, both in the front with those two. They just kind of look like they were plunked down there, the 2 Victorian style kind of lantern lights in the front. And I also don't quite understand the need to put metal poles that are possibly 6 feet tall on top of a 6 foot. I don't understand the need for that. If you want some kind of lighting in the back, there's probably a different way to do it on your deck. Actually, isn't that going to be gone?
Those will be.
Yeah, that's going to be gone.
So there is no plan to redo those kinds of lights. Okay. Because I did have concerns about that when I saw the picture, but I don't really have anything additional to add than what has already been said, but I do have concerns with the 2 lights in the front.
I'd like also to commend the applicant on the redesign. It's a vast improvement from the original drawings. Keeping in, character with the bungalow style of the house. I know it's been a long process for you. I'd like to see us move forward, but I'd really like to emphasize the importance of getting permits for stuff and checking with city and staff before you just, change things. There's a lot of stone walls in that neighborhood for sure. But it's like, that's why the ARC is here. So we could say, well, it should be Carmel stone and not granite, or it could be, we could weigh in on that stuff, and then it'll probably, save money in the long run. So, it's a tough situation when you've got a neighbor that doesn't agree with what you want to do, and you've got needs and they've got needs. And this is one of those situations where we're just gonna have to find a happy medium between, in my opinion. So if we were to hear a motion, we'd have, well, like, how many conditions are gonna be on this? Like, there's the cup, right? The use permit.
Yep.
What else?
Correcting some of the inaccuracies. I found the photo that Justin was referring to, and I'm not necessarily against seeing if the applicant is willing to reroute that as part of their project. I think that can be even done at the surface level, and if they're willing to break the concrete, they can do it that way.
Okay.
If you want to fold in the lighting both in the front and the rear yard that they're not approved, that can be removed as a condition as well.
Well, I mean, how much of this is going to be covered with compliance anyway? I mean, are you guys going to go out and talk to them about those 2 light poles, the Victorian light poles? Okay, so that's going to get taken care of. How about drainage situations like downspouts? Is that compliance? It's not really ARC.
Yeah, I mean, that specific downspout that was called out, I mean, it was existing condition. So, I mean, I
Okay.
just didn't look at it in that regard, but if, I'm more so looking at it as if the applicant is just willing to do it, we can fold it in as part of the approval, and that hopefully alleviates some of that concern at the shared lot line.
I think we could condition it though, because they've added roof area, which means they're intensifying runoff, which means that we can address that issue without
That's
going
fine.
into the whole code compliance thing.
Um. Any other comments from the committee?
Glad to see also trying to plant some plants and things like that. Please continue that. But also add appropriate soil and things like that to help with that. That should alleviate some of the, the visibility of the yard from the neighbors and things as well. So do continue trying to do that. That's my only other comment.
Okay, so I can try to do a motion here. To approve 351 Watson Street Architectural Review Permit ARP 21-0162 for preliminary final architectural review of exterior alterations, including a two-story addition at an existing two-story single-family dwelling with the following conditions, that a use permit for the daycare is applied for.
The condition.
Oh, it's 8 or less, that the number of participants is 8 or less to keep it under the small family
You can say as recommended by staff.
as recommended by staff. Thank you. And everything else is
Skylights.
compliance. Oh, skylights.
Lights or
We're gonna-
windows, there wasn't a lot of discussion about windows. but
Instead of, well, that's true. I was actually okay with the windows. I mean, they looked a lot better than what they were originally. So we're getting off track here, but basically skylights, reducing the number of skylights from 6 to 2. And
Do you want to specify?
yeah,
North side,
and
South side?
I think it was the east. Or was it? Yeah, not the south side. I'm sorry. Let me just withdraw this motion for a second because it's just getting really complicated. Let's just talk about this again. So any other comments about the windows? You're good with windows.
Yeah.
Okay. Skylights from 6 to 2. And on what side are we okay with them being on? Is it that,
I did mention dormer as a possibility. We didn't talk about that much, but
okay, let's,
We'd be asking.
that'd be a comeback thing.
is it?
Yeah.
Does it require
Cause that's
too much of a change?
I think so, yeah.
So
I mean, it would require the story poles to be redone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's taller.
I
think
would
the
recommend
applicants-
2 on the north.
Then
2 on the north. Okay, I just couldn't remember what.
Yep.
What was north? Okay, here we go again.
Okay, just before you start. So 2 on the north.
2 on the north.
I think we should condition the drainage on the
Drainage.
south side of the
Okay.
house. They should carry the water to a dissipation pit in the rear of the property and not drain to the neighbor's house. So we got skylights, I don't think we even need to condition the use permit. Like that's,
You guys are gonna do that anyway.
you guys are
right?
gonna do that
Well,
A
per
condi-
staff recommendation.
Yeah.
for
That's all-
staff
that's all.
recommendations. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if you didn't adopt it, it would still become code compliance issue and
Right.
I,
Okay.
I think we want to tie it to the approvals, so we can't issue their building permit and make that very clear.
Okay.
Until that's resolved.
All right. So back to approve 351 Watson Street ARP number 21-0162 for preliminary final architectural review and exterior alterations, including a 2-story addition at an existing 2-story single-family dwelling with the conditions that the applicant follows staff recommendation on the use permit for a daycare center. That the number of skylights is reduced from 6 to 2 and only on the north side of the roof. And that the downspout that now empties out onto a concrete and goes across to the neighbor is redirected to some sort of appropriate drain that takes the water to the Cooper Street direction. How's that sound, Erica? Well,
I would suggest percolates on site, or
Percolates on site.
that's the preference.
Okay. Can you read that back, Erica?
Number of skylights is reduced from 6 to 2 on the north side of the roof. And a downspout that percolates on site.
And then just correction of notes.
Yeah, correct, correct. No, sorry. Sorry. Uh, So the east side. So the east side is towards the ocean, right? Like towards the bay. Okay, thank you. Let's change that to east side and not north side, so that it's not on either neighbor side, it's facing out the back. Does that make sense? Okay. Do we have to open up for public comment? Okay, thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, so can you just read it one more time, Erica?
Yes, applicant will follow staff recommendation for a use permit for a daycare center. Number of skylights to be reduced from 6 to 2 on the east side of the roof, and the downspout will percolate on site.
Is there any other?
Downspouts on the south side of the house shall be rerouted to percolate on site.
Okay. Before we take a vote, are there any other committees, any other comments on this motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It carries unanimously. This can be appealed to the planning commission within 10 days. Or even sooner online, I believe, or you have 2 days if you do it online, something like that.
Within 10 days, but we do have applications online or in our planning office.
Okay. Thank you very much. Moving on. Item number 6, consider 1300 Moonris Avenue Architectural Review Permit ARP 22-0245 for preliminary and final architecture review of a chain link fence installation. And we're going to hear from Mr. Buggert again.
I'm going to recuse myself. I live next door to this project. 2 doors down. Well, this is the last item on the agenda.
I guess you can go.
Dismissed?
You gotta come back with the issue.
I guess it's good I did show up. I guess it's good I did show up.
Yeah,
Now we have
it's good you-
quorum. Yeah.
Go ahead, man.
All right. I will share my screen. Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Buggert, and I'm an associate planner with the City of Monterey's Planning Division. Today, we're here to talk about 1300 Moonris Avenue. This is an architectural review application for a chain link fence at 1300 Moonris Avenue, which I already said. The recommendation from city staff is that the ARC adopt the resolution to approve the architectural review permit application with conditions of approval. The site is in the southern portion of the city, the southwestern portion of the city. It is designated commercial in the city's general plan and has a zoning of visitor accommodation facility, VAF zone, which is for our hotels. Some background on the project: the city's code compliance coordinator responded to a complaint about the fence installation. The fence is considered a non-structural addition. Non-structural additions are subject to review by ARC. And this is a retroactive architectural review permit for the fence. The proposed project, here's an aerial of the site. the parking lot against Monroe Avenue, and the Del Monte Shopping Center is across that road. And on the southern portion of the site, there is a fence installed that runs along the property line in between a raised roadway via Buena Vista and a recreational area that's been fenced in with some turf, which is on the future slides, such as here. The fence in question is the fence along the rear there with the green screening material that's on it. It's been noted that this recreation area is used by visitors, and it's liked as a lunch and smoking area. And as you can see, there's a retaining wall, which is what the raised street is on the other side of the fence. One thing that's a little hard to see in this photo is around here, behind this umbrella. It's been hit by a vehicle and has been warped a little bit over there, and is angled into the site. The plans for the chain link fence are included. It is 4 feet high, which is allowed with a tension bottom wire between brackets. Findings required for approval by ARC is that the siding form, mass, and style are appropriate for the site. I have an asterisk next to this one because I'll be talking a little bit about it on a future slide. The fence must be found to not impair views, privacy, or the environment. There were not significant impacts found there. The project must be consistent with guiding documents such as the general plan, and the fences are allowed within VAF zones as long as they are approved through ARC. The finish colors and materials must be found appropriate for the site. This is somewhat tied to item 1. For item 1, there are no other visitor accommodation facilities within 1,000 feet of the motel that include chain link style fencing. Some of them have metal fencing, but they're more vertical, like constructed. They're not purchased as you would a chain link style fence from. They're a little bit more sturdy. That's what I'm trying to get at. Also, there's no other existing chain link style fencing at the property, and it does not necessarily fit in with the area landscape. There is some alternative material that was suggested by the applicant after we spoke a little bit about it, and not necessarily this color was proposed, but that they would try and match the color with the existing structure that's on site. The condition that staff has recommended is that within 30 days of today's meeting, the applicant shall submit plans to planning staff that show a fence that is updated with a different material type. The form, placement, height, all of that was found to be consistent. However, it was primarily the material that was of question. And so the condition is to update it with wood, stone, or stucco painted to match the building or a similar natural aesthetic that is appropriate for the project site and somewhat matches some of the other hotels in the area, excluding the use of chain link fencing. And this would be determined by planning staff when they submit for it. And then within 90 days of today's meeting, after getting that material approved, the applicant shall install the replaced fence in the same location, same height, and so on. So with that, the proposed conditions for the project are the fence material to be updated and the standard conditions of approval that are included with most projects. With that, staff's recommendation is to adopt the resolution to approve the architectural review permit with the condition of approval. That concludes staff's presentation. We have received one public comment that was in opposition of the chain link fence. And I do not believe that the applicant is here today.
Thank you, Matthew. Are there any questions for Mr. Bruggert?
Yeah, I guess I'm just a little confused. Is it, are we not approving it then? If your recommendation is to basically your recommendation is to not approve what they're proposing. So then,
They have already built it. Right?
I can clarify, sure. So if the fence is denied, then they would remove the fence and there would be nothing that's there. If we approve the fence in the location, the height, the length, the placement of it, with the condition that the effectively replaced with an appropriate material as determined by planning staff, they would not have to reapply for a fence in the future because any aesthetic changes for the AF zone needs to come through ARC. So this was the most,
so they would simply come back to you, not to the ARC with the new material.
with the revised material, if that condition is approved by ARC. Otherwise, if you would like to see them come back with an updated material, ARC can request that they come back to ARC versus coming back to planning staff.
Okay, thank you.
Matthew, I do have a question. I do have a question. Since there was a letter in opposition from one of the neighbors, would that revised design, if we approve it with that condition of approval, would the neighbors be notified of the redesign? Is there any way they could be notified? Since there's already been opposition. I know the opposition probably mostly had to do with the chain link material. And the alternative is basically a chain link fence again. And I know that's not your recommendation, but is there any way the neighbors would have a chance to review that prior to a final permit being approved?
I may ask for Fernanda's guidance on this, and I can double check the language of what was included in the letter.
So the city code does not require notification to neighbors of a change in fencing. The neighbors do have the choice of requesting notification. It's just we've done it before for other properties. We just put a letter in the file that says any planning permit or building permit or change in the fence to notify the neighbor on paper. That's one way that we can notify them.
But their concern was the chain link fence, correct? Which is going to be corrected.
Right.
I just want to make sure.
Matthew, do you have any photos of the other fences on the property that you said weren't chain link? I mean, if it's a cool looking fence, could we just make them match it or?
Not off the top of my head.
You do a
But
Google map search?
yeah, I am going to try that. I know what it looks like now, so I can at least.
It'd be nice if, oh, it's like a big old stucco wall
Yes,
and. Okay, so. And then on the back, it's like just a redwood fence. Okay,
And this site is to the left of this, right? If you pan left, it's behind that building,
yes,
basically.
it is over
Yeah.
here.
Yep.
There,
oh, so that's what it was. It was a hedge.
yes,
Uh,
it has been some time, but yes.
Yeah, I think the letter from the complaint said it was a fence that had been grown over with plants, so. Yeah. I wonder why they tore that out. Oh, to make it a seating area. Okay, I get it. Okay. Yeah, let's see if we can see. Yeah, there is a fence kind of underneath.
This
there.
was 2019 and the previous photo was 2021.
Right. Yeah. So your recommendation, you just gave in the options of stucco, wood. There's a third.
Yeah, I guess if you could just pull up your recommendation again, that would be helpful. And then and with the new, I guess another question with what's there, is there room for planting? Or with,
I am not sure I'm not sure where their property line is. For instance, I don't know if there's any room between the fence and their property line, or if the fence was placed on the property line. There is certainly not room between the fence and the retaining wall.
it looked like the fence was on top of the retaining wall, was it not?
Right. Yes, there's not room between the fence and the because it's
It
all.
looks like there's plants outside the fence still.
Some, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there might be a little bit of
Yeah.
room to plant some stuff out there to.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like a grape stake would look good or something, like it might not match the rest of the building, but. Yeah. So you're saying that whatever they come back with is just going to go to planning. It's not going to come back to us
As currently drafted,
as
yes.
currently drafted. Okay. Any other
ARC
questions for Chris? I'm Matthew, sorry.
I was just gonna say ARC has the authority to change that.
Right. No other questions? Are there any public comments? Oh, okay. State your name. Oh, does the applicant have a presentation?
There are no attendees online.
Okay, thank you. So state your name and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for your time. I'm Jean Rash and I'm president of the Monterey Vista Neighborhood Association. And this issue has come to our attention. And I have a letter, I'll just read it. Dear Architectural Review Committee, the Monterey Vista Neighborhood Association objects to the installation of the chain link fence at 1300 Munros Avenue as inconsistent with city codes. We also ask that if the elevated seating area was not permitted and is against code, that the seating area be cited and changed to follow codes. We also feel it would be appropriate to plant hedging on the outside of whatever fence is installed. Thank you for your time on this issue. Sincerely, Jean Rash. We would like to be noticed of any changes, please. And we're all thinking along Matthew's lines that it's the chain link fence that's the problem. I mean, there's about, I defer to you, I think I counted 10 panels of 10 feet. It's a long expanse of chain linking and it's remarkably ugly and not consistent with the area, as Matt pointed out. But what hasn't been talked about is that seating area has a retaining wall that's worrisome and I think has some liability. I'm an attorney, so there's some liability, I think, now into the city because you've been talking about the retaining wall. There's pictures of the retaining wall and that it's I was surprised when I went on site to see how tall the distance is from the far end of the retaining wall to their pavement. In the picture, it eluded me when I looked at the picture. When I drove down there, it's at least 4 feet at the far end and that needs a retaining wall or something up to code. I don't think we mind the seating area, but I would worry about the liability now that we've looked at all the pictures and talked about it. So mainly the neighborhood association is worried about the chain link fence and we'd like to see that gone. Thank you. There appears to be enough room outside the chain link for landscaping. There would be even more if the chain link fence came down and they just replaced all the landscaping that unfortunately was taken out. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, thank you. My name is Susan Thompson. My husband and I are both residents and owners of a house at 50 Via Buena Vista, right around the corner from that chain link fence installation. We are concerned that the applicant, number one, built without a permit, did not consult anybody about it, put it up. Within a week or so of that fence going up, it was graffitied. And rather than repair that in any way, they just spray painted a green paint over that thing. Then it was damaged. Don't know whose fault, but someone has insurance on that. And they have refused to fix it. So not only was it initially ugly, replaced a lovely greenscape that we had. And you probably know the community. You all are obviously, volunteers, and I appreciate what you're doing. But to put up something like that in an area of expensive homes, we take pride in our community. We take care of our neighbors' homes when they're unable to. This is horrible. I am reluctant to agree with the staff's recommendation that only staff would look at the design, because I would hate to see something that we have to look through. You put up a nice fence and you shouldn't have to look at people smoking cigarettes outside. People walk their dogs here. We have a very nice community and we'd like to retain it that way. So we would appreciate it if you would not approve, but that you would have them bring back a design for you to look at. Preferably something that has landscaping around it that would deter a future graffiti, potentially. We haven't had much of that in the community, to be honest. It didn't happen until after they put up that fence. But I think there's ways around this, and we would all like to be, neighborly, but it certainly does detract from we believe, from our aesthetic in the community. We are neighbors of Justin Pauley, but I don't have a conflict of interest to come here today and tell you that this is got to be taken care of. And I don't trust that those owners are going to do anything unless they are forced to do it. And I'd love to see it come back to you for design review. Thank you very much.
Thank you. State your name. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Charles Thompson. I live in the neighborhood there, as my wife just spoke about, but I wanted to make one additional comment about the fencing is because it's damaged and it has had graffiti on it. We also begin to see people dumping their trash in front of us. So it's sort of spiraling downhill. And so most of the neighbors go out and we pick up the trash and that. But I think that it's because of the way the fence looks. Before, when it was plant material, obviously there's no way to graffiti that, and it fit in with the neighborhood. And I also would encourage you to have them bring plans back to you for your approval so you can actually see what they propose to build.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the public in person, online, Erica?
There are still no attendees online.
Okay, we're going to close public comment on this item. And committee comments?
Can I ask another question? When I'm trying to remember what you said, if it was rejected, you're saying that the fence would have to be removed and nothing would be there for a while, and then they would have to come back. Is that what I was hearing?
Effectively, yes. The thing that they installed could not be installed without review. So.
But isn't that?
Nothing could go in until it is approved.
Isn't that a code concern? Because it did look like it was, it's hard to tell on the photos how far the fall.
As in, can you?
I heard if that fence is removed, then you're opening it up. Someone could fall off that fence, the wall that would be left when that fence is removed.
That is absolutely a safety concern. I'm not sure what would go, Fernanda. I'm not sure what would go.
So we can talk to our building division to see if there needed to be some sort of railing installed. Because you're right, if once a retaining wall passes a certain height, you need to have some railing. But we can check on that. And if you do end up denying the application today, and then they're required to remove the fence, then if it's found that the retaining wall is a safety concern, we would probably have them just barricade it off so that no one falls off.
Usually a temporary
Mhm.
Right.
So,
is a chain link fence, but yeah.
Yeah.
So,
so Fernanda, could we continue for redesign? If we were to do that, then that temporary fence does not have to be removed until the redesign. Can we also put a time limit on when they come back with a redesign?
So
I don't know. So in the state of California, there's a Permit Streamlining Act. And I'm not sure. So once an application is deemed complete, we have 60 days for it to be approved or denied. And I don't know whether we've hit, we're close to hitting that 60-day deadline.
I'll follow.
they, it was waived. The permit streamlining
Oh.
act is waived on their behalf. It was requested that the item be moved to this meeting.
I'll just follow up
Okay.
for the benefit of the neighbors. It is actually by approving it with very strong conditions. That would be the fastest way to get
Something
this
better,
situation improved.
right?
And because that would be essentially approving this, they would come back quickly. Well, we could also stipulate more precisely what we want.
Well, it says 30 days, right? They're going to come back with the design in 30,
The current
30,
condition,
and it has to be done in 90.
the current conditions as written are returning with a design at present to staff that could change within 30 days. Them coming to us with a design within 30 days. If it were to go back to ARC, there's timing requirements there, so it wouldn't come back to you guys within 30 days, but they would at least
it
have
would
the
have to be
application
noticed
within
that.
30 days, and then it could come back to ARC.
So so what I'm saying is, couldn't we say, for example, stucco wall should be replaced with a stucco wall to match existing stucco walls on site?
Yeah.
And planting to be approved by staff. And that would be the fastest way to, because we basically telling them what to do. Is that accurate?
Yes, you could make it that specific and then put a time limit on it.
I've got one more question. I'm just curious, out of curiosity. So the retaining wall didn't need to be permitted or it just wasn't?
The retaining wall and permitting associated with that would have been done long before with the original building permits.
It was existing.
So
But-
That was existing.
Matt,
So that was underneath all that planting?
I think so.
Okay, I got it.
how tall is the wall? Okay, I'm getting confused. I know there's from the parking lot to the top of that one retaining wall on the parking lot side seems quite high. What is it on the street side?
Little to none.
So like just a little curb, kind of like what we saw in that picture with the chain link fence, with the chain link sitting on, it's just that curb. So the safety concern, the neighbor bought it was actually more on the parking lot side, on the private property side, correct?
If you fell off
From the street,
road
you
side
fall into the
property. yeah.
smoking area, whatever it is.
I am not a fan of the chain link fence. I wrote a note and it said yuck.
I think we're all in
I
agreement
don't
that
know
that's
if
going
we
away.
want I don't know that a stucco wall would be appropriate there if there was, ivy or some crawling plant on it to break up that harshness. I just am not sure. And if they're already having issues with graffiti,
Yeah.
you're just
that's
giving
part of
them
the-
bigger canvas to paint on. But it needs to be redesigned.
So would wood. And
True.
and
True.
that's a wood is more of a fire hazard.
I just don't know if
They're smoking, so.
that
Yeah.
big block wall is appropriate for
Which side?
the street side.
Yeah, but that's the condition of planting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's-
Maybe just.
Okay, because I saw wood in there mentioned too, so I
Well,
wasn't quite sure.
That's why we're discussing.
Yeah.
And we could say,
Yeah, I don't know. It's gonna take a while for any planting to grow on that wall. It's just gonna be kind of this big rectangle of stucco, which in the meantime is not gonna look.
Which
as
is the same
pleasant.
for the rest of the site. I mean, the site does have a lot of that. There are a number of,
It'll look better than a chain link fence, but then the neighbors are gonna have to see a big stucco wall for years.
Well, I think there could be some good wood alternatives that aren't just like the cheapest wood fence you could find, like, grape stakes or, something that would
Yeah,
kind of be kind of cool with some planting that would cover it eventually as quickly as possible.
I'm leaning
Uh,
towards that more
I don't know.
than the
It's
stucco wall.
cheaper than stucco, and stucco's heavy and dense and you can't see through it. And
can't
and
see
it-
through it, prevent sound. but-
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's your wheelhouse because you're a landscape architect. But for me, I know that Justin Pauly has a grape stake fence in front of his house, which is right across the street. So, something like that. But I guess what we're trying to do is move this forward so that it gets the chain link down as quickly as possible with something better. And what's the fastest way to do that? Is it to make a motion to approve this item or this resolution, and then that means that the chain link can stay. They have to come back within 30 days with a proposed redesign. Because I would like to see, like, if it's just another chain link thing with like wood slats in it, that's not really that much of an improvement.
No.
And I think it should also have a condition that there is some sort of planting outside the fence to cover the fence eventually, like it had before. So what's the fastest way to resolve the chain link fence that's there now?
Well, so I was trying to see if we had some agreement which would get us to the fastest way.
Yeah.
But it's sounding like we don't have as much agreement.
Well, I mean,
So
if
so
we
my
can agree on
recommendation would
a
be to-
wooden fence versus a stucco fence.
So my recommendation would be to change that and just deny it and see whatever comes back.
Well,
Because
if we
because
deny it, that
the-
means they rip out the
And then-
fence.
I don't know that that's necessarily true because there's possible code issues.
So, okay, the Matthew just said that the applicant waived their permit streamlining act rights. So there is no time limit on the permit. You can continue it. Or you can deny it or approve it. So you have many options.
Okay. So let me ask you this. So if we approve it, the fence that's there stays, and do they have to come back to us within 30 days, or do they have to come back to staff within 30 days with an alternate design?
It depends on what the condition of approval
We
is.
could condition
We can
it.
condition it. Okay. So I would probably lean towards that. Let's approve it and let's say and then you need to come back to us within 30 days with, actual drawings.
Oh,
That it
wait, no,
doesn't need
so
to be
what I
redone.
meant is if you approve it, then it wouldn't come back to you. Unless that's where you would use a continuance instead of an approval.
Does the continuance need
Okay.
to be renoticed?
No,
Okay,
Okay, so that would
be better.
be better.
Continue it.
Okay.
it needs to be to a certain date, though,
Okay,
a certain meeting date.
let's look at our calendars. So it's the first and second Wednesday.
Thanks, Erica. Or is that Matt that has the calendar up?
So
Thank you.
August 16th too soon?
That's a month. I don't,
That would be the second Wednesday of August.
It would make them,
Right.
it would make them come back with some visuals.
Right.
in-
And then the fence that's there stays there. So it's a continuance. So they come back, they show us what they're going to put in.
They could also choose not to change their proposal, like that's the risk,
Oh, they could just say, well,
that it's continued and they're just gonna show up to the meeting, but
not
not
have,
come with a design, a
I mean,
different
that's-
design.
That's what was strange to me is we're essentially denying it. What they're,
but
no, denying it would be that they don't have a fence at all. No fence, nothing there. The
We're
chain
denying
link
it.
gets torn down and it's just an open area. If we deny it, they don't have to put anything new back up.
I don't know that that's true. I mean, they'd have to look at code, but
so how can we make them come back with a design option in 30 days?
to the ARC? Come back to the
Or-
ARC?
Or staff, I mean.
Well, I think-
I'd like it to be ARC, but if staff streamlines the process and gets the fence changed as soon as possible.
I mean, you could condition it continue it with you can't place a condition on a continuance, so you can recommend that they come back with a stucco or wood redesign. But
Okay.
it doesn't mean that they will.
That's to their risk that it does get denied the next time. If they come back with it,
And that's the risk they took when they put the
Right.
fence up without
Okay.
finding out the.
So then if we did a continuance and we, with a strong recommendation to come back with a redesign within 30 days, and that'll be on August 16th. And they don't, we can just not approve it. And then they have to tear it down and start the whole process over, which is, okay. And then they'll have to rope that area off and they can't use it for their customers.
Right.
and there's, I would say also, I don't know if we can do that, but there's nothing saying it has to be as tall as it is.
Mhm.
So it could be a,
The fence, you mean?
yeah, it could be a shorter retaining wall with a hedge on the other side of it and.
Well,
It
there's
would be
probably,
nice if we could just
stucco
pop
wall.
the hedge back, but
yeah,
But we
But-
don't need to design it for them. We just need to say that
but yeah,
it's inappropriate in height, style,
material.
material.
I think
And come
specifically
back.
state no
Yep.
chain link or
Yeah.
anything.
We can only strongly recommend that. if
Using
it's a
chain link.
continued,
Wood,
so,
stone or
right?
stucco.
I would like
wood or
to, s-
stucco.
That was the recommendation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I,
But that's if we approve it, not if we continue it.
what I was going to say is there's the risk that in the continuance, when it comes back, that we are in the same position that we are now.
Correct, but then we
We-
deny it.
we
because gave them
deny
a
it.
Chance.
so if we deny it,
Right.
code compliance would make them remove the chain link fence, correct?
And we would need to coordinate with building in terms of safety.
So theoretically, that whole area could become unusable. So if they want to continue to use that area, they would have to design a fence that would get approval.
But it might, we don't know if it requires a guardrail.
The
Well, it
guardrail
has
would
to
be on
from
the
the street.
parking side.
We don't know that though. I asked.
Does it require, oh, that's what we
don't
don't
know.
know
It's
on
a
the
risk.
street side?
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't
I
know.
see.
It's like a 2-foot drop or something. So Matthew, you're in contact with the property owner. I mean, it's your client or whatever. I
Yes.
mean, okay, so could you go to them with the recommendation that, ARC wants to see in 30 days an optional fence, wood, stucco or stone, or they're going to deny it. I mean, can we say that? I mean, can we let them know how we're going to play our cards?
It can be phrased in a way that suggests that.
So then we need a motion to continue.
A motion to approve, continue or deny.
Anybody want to? Okay,
Um. Motion to continue. 1300 Munoz Avenue, permit ARP 22-0245. With strong recommendation to modify and bring back to the ARC with more appropriate materials, including wood, stone, or stucco, and additional planted screening.
Can we
Can you,
specifically state that
date.
there's no chain link?
that can be in your recommendation.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think we need to add that since the alternative was chain link with wood slat.
right. So,
And
Yeah, I thought that's pretty clear with wood, stone, or stucco.
yeah, sure.
It's clear to us, but
can you state the meeting date that you would like it to come back? to?
Sure, that was the 16th of August, to come back on the 16th of August.
Okay.
Can you read that back to us, Erica?
There's been a motion to continue this item to the August 16th ARC meeting with the recommendation that the applicants modify and bring back to the ARC a design with more appropriate materials, including wood, stone, or stucco, and additional landscaping.
Yes.
I'll second that. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? So the continuance passes unanimously. And it can't be appealed because it's a continuance, right? Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your views on this project. Are there any committee member comments?
I do have one. I'm concerned about the number. I really don't know how to solve it, but I just want to voice my concern. The number of violations or after the fact permits that we're getting, especially those hotels along Monroe. It seems like every week we have one or two. I can't even keep them straight. I'm not sure if we've seen Super 8 before on a violation or not.
We have.
So I am concerned with the number of violations that we're seeing. And even after the previous application that we heard, he went and added more stuff even after he's been here at least once or twice. So I'm concerned about the number of violations that we're seeing. And it could just be because I used to do code enforcement. It just seems like there's been an excessive amount, and I just have a concern about that.
It is interesting. I mean, I see some of that even in my neighborhood and stuff
Yeah.
too, and sort of wonder about it with all sorts of different things. I mean, be
Are
it-
there penalties for after the fact permits? Like I know I used to work for the 2 county jurisdictions. It was double fees. I don't know if Monterey has any kind of penalty like that.
It's double fees for building permits, but not planning permits.
for life safety issues.
Is,
probably, yeah.
is there a compliance person that's staff or is it just a contractor?
We do have a staff member,
Oh, good.
one.
Yeah.
But,
Yes.
and I mean, of course, they can't go around.
Yeah, so there, it's a
Looking for-
staffing problem. It's not
Yeah.
just
Well,
that,
From my experience, I know most compliance is complaint based.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So unless somebody's complaining about it,
Yep.
the city doesn't know
Right.
necessarily, although, I guess with one staff person, you can't do a lot, but if there was more than one, you could kind of, especially those hotels along Monroe's that we're seeing every week, you can kind of
And a
keep
budget.
track.
Yeah,
And budget.
or a budget to do a flyering. I don't know, like that came to mind to me with some things. I mean, there's whatever, lots of gas leaf blowers being used everywhere in neighborhoods, and that's a law, but I think sometimes people don't know or care, and it's kind of wait and see, throw the dice. So I do wonder sometimes if it's just, maybe all the hotels get a flyer that says you must do this, just a reminder. That wouldn't cost a lot, but anyway, yeah, agreed. It did seem noticeable how many.
Okay, so since we've seen Super 8 before, does that incrementally go up the more times they violate, or is it just always double building fees?
It's always a double building fee if they proceeded without the necessary permits. There are citation fees, like first time citation, I think it varies. It could be $100. Next time it's 200, and I think it goes up to 1,000, I think. So that's for the citation, and then once they apply for the building permit, it would be double fees.
And a yellow tag just stops the construction. It doesn't stop the use, correct?
Yeah, red tag would stop construction.
But would projects like that ever be red tagged?
The fence, no. Because they finished they installed it and then someone complained, so they didn't catch it. And also it probably didn't need a building permit. So there would have been no red tag.
And no fees
associated.
because there's no permit.
Right.
Any other comments? Okay, any informational reports or staff comments?
Nothing other than what's on your packet, at the June 20th city council meeting. They shared the community survey results of the housing element update. And they also selected preliminary housing opportunity sites to allocate our required 3,654 housing units that we need to plan for to be hopefully constructed in the next 8 years. So that's, we're moving forward with that. Do you have any questions about it?
No, any questions about?
Is that on
Andy?
top of some of the infill projects we've seen like along Garden Road? Is those number of units on top of that? Or can those be included in that number?
They can be included to meet that number.
Planning has a lot of heavy lifting to do. Is that the planning office update?
Yes.
Okay. I've always done this on boards. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? So moved. Second, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Thank you, everybody. So that concludes our meeting at 6:11 PM. Thank you.